She's just 8 years old, too small for the suit she wears, and the file folder in her hands is almost bigger than she is. But don't let her size fool you, because this little girl has a mission, not to follow orders, but to fix something that money never could. What happens when a child steps into a world ruled by power? Something extraordinary. The towering glass building of Grant Tech Industries stood like a knife in the sky, sharp, cold, and untouchable, just like the man who ruled from its top floor. Lucas Grant sat behind a massive black marble desk, overlooking New York's skyline like a king watching over his empire. At just 38, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. But wealth had carved something out of him, something essential. He was rich in money but bankrupt in warmth. His eyes were steel gray, always calculating. His words were short, dry, and sharp like broken glass. He didn't do small talk, didn't do thank yous, certainly didn't do apologies. Lucas hadn't smiled in years, not since his company's first million-dollar deal. Success, he believed, came from power, not people. His office staff whispered about him like he was a ghost. They feared his sudden footsteps. They dreaded the ding of an email from his desk. He was known for firing people on the spot for things as small as spelling mistakes or forgetting to refill his coffee. He once fired an intern for sneezing in a meeting. In boardrooms, his voice ruled like thunder. He didn't just lead meetings, he crushed them. No one dared interrupt, no one dared disagree. He didn't know the names of his employees. He barely remembered birthdays, not even his own. He worked late, ate alone, and went home to an empty penthouse with windows too large and silence too loud. Lucas believed emotions were a weakness. Feelings, he told himself, were for people with time to waste. That belief cost him relationships. Friends vanished. His parents stopped calling. The last time he visited family was at his father's funeral, and even then he left before the service ended to attend a product launch. One rainy Tuesday, another assistant was called into his office. She was bright, eager, and only 3 weeks into the job. She had accidentally double-booked a meeting. "You're done," Lucas said coldly, without even looking up. She stammered, "Sir, it was just a mix-up." "Do I look like a man who tolerates mistakes?" he snapped. "Clean out your desk. Security will walk you out." She left with tears in her eyes. The elevator doors closed with a soft ding behind her, and just like that, another soul exited the cruel world of Lucas Grant. Later that afternoon, Lucas buzzed his secretary, a tired woman in her 50s who had learned to survive his storms. "Margaret," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "get me a new assistant." "Yes, sir," she replied. "Any specific qualities?" Lucas tapped his pen on the desk, eyes blank. Then he spoke slowly, as if choosing his words like weapons. "Someone who won't waste my time, someone who doesn't talk too much, someone quiet, efficient, invisible." There was a pause on the line. "Invisible, sir?" "Yes, like a shadow," he said. "Just get it done." Then he ended the call. Outside his office, the city pulsed with life, laughter, and chaos. But inside, on the top floor of Grant Tower, one man ruled like winter, bitter, silent, and without a heart. Little did he know that his cold world was about to be turned upside down. By someone far smaller than anyone could have imagined. The morning sun reflected off the floor-to-ceiling windows of Lucas Grant's office like fire on ice. He sat, sipping his black coffee, already buried in emails and contract reviews. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft ticking of the custom Swiss clock behind him. He wasn't expecting a knock, so when it came, soft but certain, it caught him off guard. "Come in," he said, not looking up. The door opened gently. He heard footsteps, small ones, light, almost playful. He glanced up and froze. Standing at the entrance was a little girl. No taller than his desk, 8 years old, maybe 9. Golden hair tied back in a messy ponytail. A tiny black blazer swallowed her frame. Her shiny black shoes clicked as she stepped in, holding a clipboard so large it nearly touched the floor. She walked past the expensive art, past the leather chairs, past the security guard who had shrugged in total confusion. And she stopped right in front of Lucas's desk. With a hop, she climbed onto the high-backed guest chair, placed the clipboard on his desk with both hands, and looked him dead in the eyes. Her expression, calm, confident, almost businesslike. "I'm here to help," she said brightly. "My name is Ellie." Lucas blinked. Was this a prank? A joke? Had the HR department lost their minds? "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" he asked, completely thrown. "I'm your new assistant," she said cheerfully, adjusting her blazer like a mini-executive. "You said you wanted someone quiet, efficient, and invisible. That's me, mostly." He stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. "You're a child." Ellie didn't even blink. "And you're rude," she replied, unfazed. "But I'm still going to help you." Lucas leaned back in his chair, lips parted slightly, unsure whether to call security or a therapist. Was he hallucinating? "You can't seriously think," he began. She interrupted. "Your 10 a.m. meeting got moved to 10:15. You have a coffee stain on your shirt collar. And your assistant who got fired yesterday left behind a folder labeled Urgent CFO Audit. It's on the floor behind your desk. You didn't see it because you never looked down." Lucas turned his head slowly. Sure enough, there it was, a red folder just peeking out from beneath the credenza. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Ellie folded her hands. "Also, I made you a peanut butter sandwich. You look like the kind of person who forgets to eat." And probably forgot what peanut butter tastes like. She pulled a neatly wrapped sandwich from her bag and placed it beside his espresso. Lucas didn't touch it. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. No adult had ever spoken to him that way, so casually honest, so fearlessly kind. And here was this little girl sitting across from him like she belonged there. He should have sent her away, should have laughed and called HR and ended this bizarre scene. But he didn't. Instead, he folded his hands and said, "One day, that's all you get." Ellie grinned. "Deal, you won't regret it." And just like that, the girl in the tiny blazer became the most unexpected assistant in the tallest tower in New York. She had no business being there, but somehow she belonged. And as Lucas returned to his work, pretending not to glance at the sandwich or the child beside him, he didn't know, couldn't have known, that his life was about to be rewritten. Not by a business deal, not by a $1 million contract, but by an 8-year-old girl who refused to be invisible. Lucas Grant had built his entire life around control. Every meeting, every minute, every heartbeat of his empire was calculated. But Ellie came in like sunlight through a cracked window, uninvited and impossible to ignore. She returned the next morning as if nothing was unusual, tiny blazer pressed, clipboard in hand, shoes polished like a soldier reporting for duty. No security guard stopped her. No one questioned her presence. She simply belonged. Even the building seemed to accept her. Lucas didn't send her away. He didn't even ask questions. It started small, little things. A note on his desk that read, "Your 2 p.m. client hates being kept waiting. Don't be late today." He wasn't. Next day, another note. "Wear the Navy suit. You look less like a villain in it." He laughed quietly. For the first time in years, someone made him laugh, and it wasn't a joke. It was honesty, disarming, raw honesty, the kind that came without filter, without fear. Ellie reorganized his entire schedule in a way that no adult assistant ever dared to. She color-coded appointments, added 15-minute breaks, and wrote reminders like, "Drink water, you're not a machine. Call your mother, unless you hate joy." He began to drink more water. He didn't call his mother yet, but he thought about it. And every day without fail, she brought him a peanut butter sandwich in a neatly folded napkin. One afternoon, he finally asked, "Why peanut butter?" She tilted her head and said, "Because you look like the kind of man who forgot what childhood tasted like." The words hit deeper than she knew. Lucas stared at her, a little stunned. His throat tightened and he looked away, hiding the sting behind his usual frown. Ellie didn't need computers, gadgets, or email alerts. She sensed things. She noticed things. "Your eyes are red," she once said. "Stop reading emails at midnight. They'll still be there in the morning." She reminded him to soften the language in his emails. Don't write, "Fix this now." Say, "Let's fix this together." People are not robots. Lucas began rewriting his emails, slowly at first, then naturally. He no longer barked orders in meetings. He started asking questions, listening. People noticed. Whispers began swirling through the halls of Grant Tower. Did you see Lucas smiling? He just said thank you to the janitor. I think he told a joke, a real one. Ellie became a mystery to the staff. This little assistant who showed up every morning with purpose in her step and a sharp pen in her hand. She never talked about school, never mentioned parents, but somehow she knew everyone's name, remembered birthdays, and drew little cartoons on sticky notes she left for employees at random desks. To the woman at reception, "You always smell like flowers. That makes people feel safe." To the nervous intern, "You're not small. You're new. There's a difference." And to Lucas, "Try being human today. You're close." Those 6 words hit harder than any business memo ever could. He kept that note in his wallet. It wasn't long before Lucas started waiting for her. Each morning, he'd glance at the elevator, pretending he wasn't looking for the little figure in the blazer. And when she arrived, it was like a breeze entered the office, fresh, unexplainable, and necessary. She didn't just change his workday, she began to change him. His walls, those heavy, cold walls of control and cruelty, started to show cracks. And through those cracks, the warmth of something forgotten began to bloom. Humanity, joy, connection. And it all came from a girl too small for her chair, too young for the title, and too wise for her years. But Lucas didn't know her secret yet. Not the full truth. That part was still waiting, just around the corner. The days had blurred into weeks, and Lucas Grant, the once untouchable CEO, had begun to look forward to something more than profits, graphs, and board meetings. He was still Lucas, still sharp, still stubborn. But now, when Ellie wasn't around, the silence felt heavier. One Friday evening, after most of the staff had gone, Lucas stood in his office holding a sticky note Ellie had left him. "Kindness isn't weakness, it's healing." Something in him stirred. A question that had lingered quietly in the back of his mind finally rose up like a whisper too loud to ignore. Who was she really? She never mentioned school. Never got picked up by a parent. No driver, no family photos, no birthday stories. So without overthinking, Lucas made a choice. When Ellie left that day, clutching her oversized clipboard, he followed from a distance. She didn't get into a car or take a cab. She walked 4 blocks through the busy streets of Manhattan, her little blazer flapping in the evening breeze. He kept his distance, weaving between people, hiding behind lampposts like a man on a mission he didn't understand. Eventually, Ellie turned and disappeared into a building. It wasn't a school or a home. It was a shelter. Old bricks, peeling paint, a flickering sign that read, St. Bridget's Family Resource and Care Center. Lucas hesitated, heart pounding in a way no investor meeting had ever made him feel. He stepped inside. The scent of warm soup, old books, and tired hope filled the air. Volunteers moved between tables. Children giggled in a corner. And then he saw her, Ellie, hugging a boy maybe 17 or 18. Tall, thin, dressed in worn jeans and a fraying hoodie. The boy turned and noticed Lucas immediately. "You're him," he said. Lucas froze. "Excuse me? You're the CEO, the one she talks about all the time. The mean man in the big office," the boy said, managing a soft smile. "Name's Jeremy. I'm her brother." Lucas blinked. "Her brother?" Jeremy nodded. "Yeah, Ellie's not really your assistant. Not officially. She's 8. She doesn't have a resume." He laughed, but his eyes were tired. Lucas was speechless. "She's been coming here after school. Our mom used to clean your office building," Jeremy continued, more softly now. "She'd bring us leftovers when she worked night shifts. She passed away last year. Cancer." Lucas's jaw tightened. Jeremy's voice didn't waver. "After that, Ellie changed. She said people forgot how to be kind, said she wanted to help fix the world in her own way." Lucas swallowed. His chest felt tight. He felt ashamed. Jeremy continued. "One night, she overheard a lady at the shelter say you were the most cold-hearted man in New York. Ellie didn't like that. She said maybe you weren't mean, maybe you were just sad and no one tried to help. Lucas's eyes burned. He looked over at Ellie, now helping serve soup to a younger child, humming softly, her little blazer dusted with crumbs and magic. Jeremy said one more thing quietly. She told me, "If I can make the mean man in the big office smile, maybe the world will remember that kindness still works." Lucas looked down at his hands. For the first time, they trembled. He had built skyscrapers, conquered markets, crushed competition, but he had never been seen like this, by a child who owed him nothing and gave him everything. She wasn't just helping him manage a calendar. She was helping him find his soul. And in that moment, surrounded by chipped paint and flickering lights, Lucas Grant felt something he hadn't felt in years. Humility, gratitude, a second chance, and he knew. The little girl in the blazer had done more than organize his life. She had rewritten it. That night at the shelter marked a quiet rebirth in Lucas Grant's life. He didn't speak much on the walk back to his penthouse. The city lights, once a symbol of his power, now felt distant, like empty stars in a sky he'd never really looked at. For the first time in decades, he saw people, not just positions, faces, not functions, and himself, not as a leader, but as a man who had missed out on living. The next morning, he didn't just show up to work. He arrived, changed. He greeted the receptionist by name, brought coffee for the mailroom staff. He paused at desks just to say, "Good morning." Employees were stunned. Was this a prank, a social experiment? But it wasn't. Lucas Grant had felt something crack open in him, and for once, he didn't rush to seal it shut. That week, he invited Ellie and Jeremy to the company's Friday celebration. Not as guests, as family. Jeremy wore a borrowed suit. Ellie wore her blazer, now decorated with glitter glue and a tiny sunflower pin. She ran to Lucas and gave him a hug in front of everyone. The room froze. Lucas knelt down and hugged her back. Then he cleared his throat and said, "This is my assistant, and my teacher." The staff clapped, slow at first, then full and sincere. Some had tears in their eyes. The following month, Lucas launched the Lydia Rose Grant Foundation, named after Ellie and Jeremy's mother. It offered full scholarships to children of custodial workers, cafeteria staff, single parents, people whose names were often forgotten, but whose efforts built the very foundation of the company. He didn't stop there. He changed company policy to include a monthly Human Day. On that day, every employee, from interns to executives, volunteered in local shelters, schools, and clinics. Ellie's idea, of course. She said, "Your company has too many screens and not enough hugs. People need both." Lucas smiled at her wisdom. "You should be CEO." "I already kind of am," she said with a wink. The walls of the office, once cold and blank, were soon decorated with Ellie's drawings. Colorful sketches of sunshine pouring into glass buildings, little stick figures holding hands, and one that made everyone stop and stare. It showed a giant man in a black suit holding the hand of a tiny girl in a blazer. Underneath, she had written, "Big people can change too." Employees who once walked on eggshells now shared ideas freely. Laughter echoed in the break rooms. People stayed late, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Lucas still ran a tight ship. He still demanded excellence. But now he led with empathy, not ego. He smiled more, listened more, cared more. One morning, he found a note on his desk from a junior manager. "I used to be scared to come to work. Now I feel like I matter. Thank you for becoming human." Lucas stared at the note for a long time. He slipped it into the drawer where he kept Ellie's first sticky note. He never threw those away. As for Ellie, she still visited every week. She'd barge into his office like she owned it, now carrying colorful markers instead of a clipboard. She'd jump into his chair, spin it wildly, and say things like, "Your hair looks stressed, maybe it needs a vacation." Then she'd hand him a drawing of a smiling cloud or a dancing dog and leave him speechless all over again. Sometimes she'd bring Jeremy along, and the three of them would sit in the executive lounge eating peanut butter sandwiches and laughing like old friends. Lucas Grant had once ruled with fear. Now he led with hope. And all it took was an 8-year-old in a blazer who refused to let him stay broken. 1 year later, Ellie came to Lucas's office with a farewell note. She said, "I think my job is done here. You don't need me anymore. You remember how to be kind now." Lucas knelt down, tears in his eyes. "You taught me more than any adult ever could." Ellie smiled. "That's because kids see the heart, not the suit." As she walked away, Lucas pinned her note to the wall behind his desk. It read, "Even the coldest hearts can be warmed by kindness, and every suit should fit a heart, not hide it." This isn't just a story about a CEO and a child. It's a mirror. It reminds us that even the most powerful people can forget how to care, and that even the smallest voices can be the ones that save them. In a world still torn by racism, cruelty, and judgment, may we all remember, hearts don't care what color your skin is, how much you make, or what title you wear. They only care how you treat others. And sometimes, it takes an 8-year-old in a blazer to teach us what it means to be truly human.